Joining me now are Tim Miller, writer-at-large at The Bulwark, and Michelle Goldberg, opinion columnist for The New York Times. Thank you both for being here. So, Michelle, what are your expectations for this issue and the 2024 election? Could it be the whole ballgame?
So I think on this very narrow issue of IVF, my guess is that they try to do something to clarify it, right? I mean, in Alabama, you see there's a Republican senator who's saying, well, maybe we'll say that life doesn't begin at conception, it begins at implantation in the uterus, because they're basically now running up against the totally foreseeable limits of defining a baby or defining personhood the way that they have chosen to do so, right? And this is something that everybody, all pro-choice people have been warning about for years, that personhood language about life beginning at conception, it impacts abortion, but it impacts much more than abortion. It impacts birth control. It impacts infertility treatments. So they might find a way to kind of square this particular circle on this narrow issue. But I think what they haven't contended with is that the practical implications of all of these laws that they've thoughtlessly passed without any real due diligence about kind of the actual process of human reproduction. So that, so we see over and over again, for example, it's not just that these kind of laws impact IVF. We see that they impact miscarriage treatment.
Yep.
We see that they impact, maternal health care. And because none of this, they haven't thought this through, because they haven't thought through both the ways that their ideology collides with reality. And they just haven't really thought that much, if at all, about women's health beyond how they can control it.
Right. Tim, I mean, it's like, are you winning if you're stipulating where in the uterus the embryo needs to be? I just feel like this is a really unforeseen consequence of everything the Republicans have been wishing for decades.
Yeah, I definitely feel uncomfortable talking about uterus location, so I assume Republican politicians...
It's a welcoming environment here, Tim.
Okay, good. I love that. I appreciate that. Yeah, that is a problem for them. And here's the thing. I think this is a misnomer, a misunderstanding about Donald Trump's... He hasn't won an election in a long time, but his last successful win in 2016. Back then in that campaign, there was a big group of voters that perceived him as basically moderate. I know that is hard for a lot of viewers of the show and others thinking people to believe, but a lot of voters looked at him. He's like, he's a libertine. He's from New York. He doesn't care that much about social issues. It's these far-right Christian conservatives that I don't like. And these are the Obama-Trump voters, right? These working-class voters that carried him to victory in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, et cetera. Okay, fast forward a few years. Doug Mastriano runs in Pennsylvania for governor on a Christian nationalist platform, with the Roe decision hanging over him, with abortion, ban at 5 weeks or whatever he proposed. He gets slaughtered. Loses by 18 points, 17 points. The gap between Trump and Mastriano was this perception that Trump is not a far-right Christian fundamentalist like some of these others in the Republicans. That allowed him to appeal to some of the more secular working-class voters that like Trump. So that is why this is such a huge problem for him, and that's why you see him panicking about it and grasping around for various solutions like the 16-week ban or whatever he floated in the New York Times the other day.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the problem with what's happened to the Republican Party since 2016 and now, right? The full-throated endorsement of Christian nationalism. I mean, there are headlines, I think, in Politico that Trump allies prepare to infuse Christian nationalism in second Trump administration. The New York Times reporting that Trump is going to embrace a 16-week abortion ban. I mean, whether or not Trump himself is a libertine from New York, the party's moved deep, deep right, and Trump's along for the ride.
And, I've seen polls that show that there are significant numbers of voters who don't blame Trump or don't attribute the end of Roe versus Wade to Donald Trump. So this is kind of work that the Democratic Party is going to have to do over the next few months, because although I think we all know that Donald Trump really could not care less one way or the other about abortion and, has declined to say whether he's ever paid for one himself, we know that the people who are going to staff his administration and certainly staff the courts are the sort of people like this guy in Texas who came close to, who tried to revoke the authorization of the abortion, revoke the FDA's authorization of the abortion bill.
Judge Kaczmarek.
Right. And this, that Politico story was about someone who is a likely Trump chief of staff in the next administration who, and they're talking about not just abortion, but contraception, no default divorce, gay marriage. And so, Donald Trump is obviously not a man with a great deal of attention to detail. So these are the people who are going to be essentially making policy in the next Trump administration. I shouldn't say the next Trump. In a next Trump administration.
There are people
God
who are like
us.
in cardiac arrest. But to that end, Tim, I almost called you Trump. I'm so sorry. Tim, the Trump campaign is pushing back, saying, oh, these white Christian nationalists have designs on the White House, but we're the ones that are calling the shots. I don't know if that's true anymore. I mean, this is the dog that caught the car to some degree. The Supreme Court is seated. The courts are going to do what the courts are going to do. I mean, Donald Trump, does he at some point answer for that? I mean, I think it's amazing that in this moment he's going to sit down with Christian broadcasters in the state of Tennessee, less than 100 miles away from Alabama, and think that somehow this issue, if not today, if not tomorrow, sometime is going to come up and he's going to have to answer for it. Not necessarily because, the fake news media is going to ask him, but because interested, Christian nationalists may want to know if he's for real about it all.
Yeah, the Christian news media is going to ask him about it. These Christians at these events are, and they're going to want him to do that. And there are going to be people, look, there are activists out there that funded that were staffed in his last administration that are part of this Project 2025 that are planning to go into the next administration. I mean, like Michelle said, Trump does not have attention to detail on who is going to be these mid-level staffers at HHS that have oversight over this sort of thing. And we already know, again, look, he made his deal with the devil. Like, he got in 2016 by outsourcing the judge list to the Federalist Society. And this is that payment coming due, right? Like, if it wasn't true, if he wasn't in line with the far right social conservatives on all these issues, then, he should have tried to put up justices that were more in line with whatever he thinks he really believes, right? And that was an option that would have been available to a president in 2016. He didn't do that. And so here's where we're at.